In his final moments behind the microphone, Malcolm-Jamal Warner didn't say goodbye. He delivered a parting gift. Beneath every pause and sentence was a chilling sense of closure. It wasn't just a podcast. It was his soul whispering goodbye. Malcolm-Jamal Warner, the beloved actor best known as Theo Huxtable from The Cosby Show, had evolved far beyond the sitcom sets that made him famous. Over the years, he became a poet, a musician, and a reflective voice in podcasting. But when his final podcast episode aired, no one expected it to feel like a whispered goodbye. Now, in the wake of his passing, fans are replaying that episode, not just for comfort, but for answers. And what they're hearing now hits deeper than ever before. This wasn't an ordinary episode. There were no flashy intros, no guest stars, no musical interludes, just Malcolm, his microphone, and a voice heavy with something unspoken. Now, as the world mourned his death, that voice has become sacred. Listeners are left wondering, did Malcolm know something we didn't? The tone, the choice of words, the final pause. Everything now feels like a breadcrumb trail leading to a truth he never spoke out loud. He didn't say, "This is my last episode," but in a way he did. In that 48-minute monologue, he talked about time, healing, acceptance, fear, and forgiveness. Themes we often associate with closure, yet no one caught it at the time. I think we're all just renting space on this earth, borrowing time. And the real question is, what are you doing with your lease? When Malcolm uttered those words, it was more than a moment of casual introspection. At the time, it might have seemed like the kind of thing you say when you're feeling a bit philosophical, reflecting on existence, time, and the fragility of life. But now, in hindsight, that quote strikes a chord so deep, it almost feels like a whisper from beyond, a warning, a farewell, a truth that was too heavy to fully grasp at the time it was said. Those words now haunt the corners of our memory, like a candle that flickers just before it burns out. We often hear phrases like, "life is short," or "tomorrow is not promised." But borrowing time hits different. To borrow something implies it was never truly yours to begin with. You're holding it temporarily, with the understanding that one day you'll have to give it back. In Malcolm's voice, the phrase took on a layered meaning. This wasn't about romanticizing death. It wasn't about being poetic for the sake of sounding wise. It was a challenge, one that demands immediate introspection. He was confronting us with the truth that our lives, our time, our very breath, are on loan, and that every second ticking forward is a second we must choose how to spend, wisely or wastefully. It wasn't a quote for applause. It was a mirror. Malcolm didn't just leave us with a haunting idea. He left us with a question. What are you doing with your lease? A lease, a temporary agreement, an arrangement that comes with responsibilities and terms. It's a reminder that we are all, in a sense, tenants in this life. We inhabit this body, walk this earth, form relationships, build dreams, but ultimately, it all returns to dust. And so the question remains, what are we doing with our time here? Are we filling our days with grudges and grievances, or are we planting seeds of kindness, purpose, and change? Are we too busy proving ourselves to people who don't matter, while ignoring the ones who do? Are we chasing status or significance? Malcolm's question isn't just rhetorical, it's revolutionary, because when you sit with it long enough, it becomes impossible to ignore the areas of your life where you've been living on autopilot. When someone passes away, we often look back at their last words, their final interviews, the things they posted, the energy they radiated, and sometimes it feels like they knew. Like part of them was preparing, consciously or not, for the end. In Malcolm's case, this quote doesn't feel accidental. It feels like a quiet surrender to something larger, a knowing glance at the clock on the wall, not one of fear, but of acceptance, and perhaps urgency. It's one thing to say something wise. It's another to live it. And Malcolm lived like a man aware of time's fragility. His work, his creativity, his efforts to uplift others. None of it was done passively. He lived like a man racing against the clock, determined to make his lease count. And now, with his passing, those words ring louder. He wasn't just talking about a life. He was talking about his. In that same moment, Malcolm spoke about how people waste time hating each other, how they carry resentment like it's armor, not realizing it's actually poison. He called out the tendency we have to let regret and bitterness eat away at our joy. And isn't that the truth? We waste so many days reliving past slights, obsessing over what we should have said, or what they did to us, or how unfair life has been. We get so wrapped up in our internal storms that we forget the sun still rises, that we still have breath. That time, precious, borrowed time, is slipping through our fingers. Malcolm dared us to look inward, to examine the places where we are still bleeding from wounds we refuse to heal. And then he encouraged us to live outward, to extend ourselves, to forgive, to let go, to rise. Now that he's gone, those messages carry even more weight, because he didn't just tell us, he modeled it. The death of someone wise always brings a cruel irony. It's as if we only start truly listening when they can no longer speak. But perhaps that's the nature of legacy. It reverberates louder in silence. Malcolm's quote is now etched into time not just as advice, but as prophecy. It was a candle he lit before walking into the dark, and now it lights the path for others, for us. It reminds us that time is not ours, that the clock is ticking, that none of us are guaranteed another tomorrow, that every apology we put off, every dream we delay, every love we withhold, could become part of a story we'll never finish. If the measure of a man's life is how he used his time, then Malcolm left behind an extraordinary blueprint. He wasn't perfect. He didn't claim to be, but he was present, intentional, awake. He gave the world performances that felt honest, raw, human. He didn't just act. He expressed. He didn't just speak. He made people feel. He used his platform to challenge stereotypes, uplift others, and create meaningful conversations. And he didn't do it for likes or applause. He did it because he understood time was limited, and he had something to say before it ran out. That's the power of borrowed time. It either paralyzes you or propels you. And Malcolm chose the latter. You don't have to be a celebrity to take this personally. Malcolm's message applies to everyone. Whether you're 16 or 60, rich or struggling, known or invisible, this truth is universal. You are on borrowed time. The question is, what will you do with it? Will you let old grudges dictate your choices? Will you spend another year in a job you hate? Will you keep waiting for the right moment to say I love you, or I'm sorry, or I forgive you? Or will you live like someone who knows the clock is ticking and decide to do something now? Sometimes wisdom doesn't come softly. Sometimes it arrives like thunder, shaking you awake. Malcolm's quote might have seemed soft at first, thoughtful, almost poetic, but in truth, it's a thunderclap, a siren, a wake-up call for anyone sleepwalking through life. It's a call to arms, a plea for urgency, because the cruel truth is, you don't always get to finish what you started. So start now, heal now, try now, speak now, love now. Borrowed time doesn't wait for the perfect moment. It expires, whether you're ready or not. To borrow something is to be entrusted with it. It comes with responsibility, a duty to protect, to cherish, to honor. Malcolm's reminder isn't meant to make us feel powerless. It's meant to make us feel purposeful. Because when you know your time is temporary, every moment becomes sacred. Every connection becomes valuable. Every act of kindness becomes a piece of your legacy. We're not here forever, but we are here now. And that is enough. If there's one thing we owe Malcolm, it's not just admiration, it's application. Let us not waste his words. Let us live with urgency, not fear. Let us treat each day like a miracle, not a given. Let us be kinder, braver, more honest. Let us stop waiting to be loved and start being the ones who love first. Let us stop keeping score and start keeping memories. Let us speak our truths, heal our wounds, pursue our purpose, and do so with both feet in. Because life is short, not in a cliché way, in a real breath-stealing, clock-ticking, one-shot kind of way. And we are all just borrowing time. When Malcolm said, "We're all just renting space on this earth," he wasn't trying to be poetic. He was telling the truth. There's no renewal clause, no extension form, no appeals office. There is only this moment, this breath, this heartbeat. So today, if you're reading this, don't just nod. Don't just reflect. Peace is a word often used by people nearing the end of a journey. Malcolm wasn't talking about celebrity drama or online rumors. He was speaking from a deeply personal place. The episode turned quiet. You could hear his voice tremble. "I spent a lot of years pretending I wasn't afraid of death. I think I finally stopped pretending." Listeners now recall that sentence as one of the most revealing moments of his entire career. It wasn't a celebrity talking. It was a man reaching the end of a long internal war. This line closed the episode. No teaser for next week. No new guest tease. Just silence. And then that. If you're listening to this, thank you. Truly. It felt final. Yet no one knew it was final. It felt like a sigh. A whisper. A curtain call. Imagine recording your last message without telling anyone it's the last. That's what Malcolm did. He didn't say goodbye in the way people usually do. He offered gratitude, reflection, and peace. And now, the world realizes that was his goodbye. Fans online have flooded the comment sections of his podcast with heartbreak and confusion. "We didn't even know we were saying goodbye." He left quietly. But his words scream now. It's not just an episode anymore. It's a legacy. The episode has since gone viral, retweeted and reposted across every major social media platform, reaching millions of people who may not have even followed his podcast before. Now, it's a sacred text, a final scripture of sorts, written in spoken word. Here is a detailed, emotionally rich expansion of the tributes and fan reactions you mentioned. This section builds on the emotional momentum of Malcolm's prophetic words and delves into the raw grief, community mourning, and celebrity tributes with storytelling depth, fitting into the overall reflection of his legacy. When the news of Malcolm's passing broke, the world didn't just lose a voice. It lost a beacon, a philosopher in sneakers, a man who wrapped his reflections in warmth, vulnerability, and wit. And almost immediately, the digital world turned into a memorial. On Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts, tributes poured in like a flood, unstoppable, raw, and filled with a kind of reverence rarely seen in today's fast-scrolling culture. Two hashtags took on a life of their own: "Thank you, Malcolm," and "Final Words, Malcolm." Within hours, they trended globally, not just in one country, not just among fans of The Cosby Show or longtime podcast listeners, but across continents, across languages. It was as if the world had collectively paused, leaned back, and realized they had lost something irreplaceable. People shared quotes, clips, favorite moments, voice snippets, annotated transcriptions, screenshots of the moment he said, "We're all just renting space on this earth." Each post felt like part of a digital shrine, delicately crafted with grief, gratitude, and stunned disbelief. Many wrote as if they were saying goodbye to a close friend. Others admitted they never met Malcolm, but his words got them through breakups, family loss, anxiety, or sleepless nights. A young man in South Africa wrote, "He didn't know me, but he saved me. This podcast episode made me want to stay alive another day." That comment alone was liked over 120,000 times. One woman posted a photo of herself holding her newborn in the hospital with Malcolm's voice playing in the background. The caption read, You were the first voice my son ever heard. Thank you, Malcolm. I'll make sure he knows your name. On YouTube, the final episode of Malcolm's podcast now resembles a digital vigil. Listeners are leaving time-stamped comments under the most powerful lines, especially the now iconic moment he said, "What are you doing with your lease?" The comments section is a scroll of tears, poetry, and heartbreak. That's the moment my heart broke. It's like he knew. Chills. This man gave us his soul. Thank you. I lost my father last month. Malcolm's voice helped me process the silence. Now I'm grieving both. On Apple Podcasts, the ratings and reviews section looks like a guest book at a funeral. People aren't rating the show anymore. They're saying goodbye. Spotify saw an unprecedented spike in replays. Malcolm's final episode now sits atop the top podcasts chart in multiple countries, not because it was trending, but because people kept returning to grieve, to feel, to remember. And every play now feels sacred. Malcolm touched lives not just through screens and headphones, but also through friendships, mentorships, and creative collaborations. And when he passed, Hollywood cried too. Felicia Rashad, his on-screen mother, mentor, and lifelong friend, wrote on Instagram, "His voice was more than a sound. It was a soul unfolding. I watched Malcolm grow into a man of such quiet strength and deep truth. He never spoke just to be heard. He spoke to help people heal, even when he was hurting. I will miss him every day." Accompanied by a black and white photo of a young Malcolm beside her on the Cosby Show set, the post received over 2 million likes and 300,000 comments in less than 24 hours. It was more than nostalgia. It was a maternal farewell to a son the world had borrowed, and now had to return. Yara Shahidi, the grownish star and activist, posted on X, formerly Twitter, "I'm heartbroken. That last episode felt like he was hugging us goodbye. Malcolm, you made being a black man synonymous with being introspective, creative, and gentle. Rest in peace, friend. Rest in your poetry." Her words were shared widely among Gen Z audiences, many of whom first discovered Malcolm through his podcast rather than his acting. It revealed just how multi-generational his reach had become. Questlove, musician, DJ, and cultural historian, offered a gut-wrenching reflection on Instagram. "I'm re-listening and crying. That was not just a podcast. That was poetry, prophecy, peace. I've interviewed hundreds of people in my life, but Malcolm's voice always cut through the noise. He taught us how to sit in silence, how to speak without yelling, how to be black and tender. That final episode, that was him handing us the mic. Don't drop it." The caption was followed by a short clip of Malcolm reciting his most famous passage, "What are you doing with your lease?" overlaid with piano and rain. That clip alone amassed over 18 million views in 48 hours. Kerry Washington called Malcolm a lighthouse in a darkening world. Sterling K. Brown shared, "He was the kind of man you wanted to become friends with after just one sentence." Ava DuVernay tweeted, "I cast light, but he carried it." Zendaya added, "I grew up hearing his voice, but only recently did I understand the depth of his mind. Thank you for teaching us how to be real." Even those who never worked with Malcolm were mourning as though they had. Reddit threads were created just to share favorite Malcolm quotes. Spotify made a special playlist of music featured or mentioned on his podcast, titled "Borrowed Time," a Malcolm-Jamal tribute. Fans began organizing listening vigils, groups gathering in parks, community centers, or even online Zoom rooms to play his podcast together, in silence or shared reflection. Some brought candles. Others wore hoodies with the words, "Make Your Lease Matter" on the back. A petition has already been signed by over 500,000 people requesting his final podcast episode be archived in the Library of Congress as a cultural artifact. Because this wasn't just entertainment, it was soul work. Malcolm's death broke hearts, but his words are still stitching them back together. These tributes, these comments, These hashtags, they aren't just digital noise. They are proof of a life that touched, transformed, and transcended. When Malcolm spoke about borrowing time, he wasn't just leaving a quote. He was leaving a mission. And now, the world is holding on to his final words as if they were sacred scripture, because in a way they are. We're all just renting space on this earth, borrowing time. And the real question is, what are you doing with your lease? The world has answered, Malcolm. We're listening. We're grieving. And we will carry your lease forward. Legacy through podcasting. Why his final episode matters. Malcolm used his platform not for gossip, not for celebrity talk, but for meaning. And that final episode, it captured all the values he ever stood for: honesty, healing, humanity. This wasn't scripted. This wasn't planned for virality. It was a pure moment of a man unburdening himself. And that's why it hurts so much more. It wasn't meant to be a goodbye. But somehow, it became the most beautiful one possible. His producers later revealed that Malcolm insisted on recording the episode alone. He said, "No edits, no notes, just let it play." That's not how he usually worked. One editor said, "It felt personal. We didn't ask questions. We just respected it." They also admitted he refused to title the episode himself. He left that blank. It now simply reads, Episode 113, untitled. Now fans have nicknamed it the goodbye episode. To those who loved him, laughed with him, and grew up watching him, Malcolm-Jamal Warner didn't leave you without a final word. He left you with a gift. One last episode, one last lesson, one last thank you. If you haven't heard that final podcast yet, go listen. Not just with your ears, but with your heart. Because somewhere in that audio, he's still speaking to you. Not as Theo, not as a star, but as a man who knew the end was near and chose to leave love behind.